My name is Robert Brox, but everyone calls me Bobby. Or at least they used to, before I ended up here. It wasn't that long ago that I was a normal kid. Sure, I wasn't the best in school or the most popular, but at least I was happy. And safe. I couldn't see that, though. I couldn't see that there were people who loved me, and I was always searching for something else, something more. That's what led me to follow my dreams and end up here. What was supposed to have been a dream had quickly turned into a nightmare. A very real, living, breathing nightmare. And as I was about to find out, it was a nightmare that would never end. My old life is gone now. That had happened the moment I stepped foot into this factory. And now there was no going back. I ran through the factory, chased by the strangest, scariest creatures I'd ever seen. What I once thought were cute little toys turned out to be vicious monsters. They chased me through the dark, winding maze of machines on the factory floor, biting at my heels as I ran, their razor-sharp teeth and claws tearing at my clothes. I didn't know what they wanted to do to me, but I had to get away. I kept running, but there was nowhere to hide. They chased me around a corner, and it was then that I realized I was trapped. It was a dead end, nowhere else to run, but I could climb. I started crawling up the huge machine in front of me, hoping that these dog box monsters wouldn't be able to follow me, but I was wrong. Their claws dug into the metal and they chased me right to the top. I stood on top of the machine. There was nowhere to go. On one side, the horrible creatures that had been chasing me. On the other, a hole that led down into a scary-looking machine full of gnashing metallic parts. Where would I go? What could I do? As I looked back and forth between my two terrible choices, all I could think was, how did I get here? Oh, honey, don't worry. It won't be so bad. I tried to hide my tears as my mom dropped me off for school, but she could see how upset I was. The other kids were always so mean to me. They made fun of me for the way I dressed, for the car my mom drove, for the lunches I'd bring to school. You see, we were a lot poorer than most of the other kids in town. My dad had died before I was born, and my mom did what she could, but times were tough. I didn't understand how hard she was trying. All I could see was that I was different from the other kids. Come on, honey, just get through today, and I promise after school I'll take you to the toy store so you can look at the new toys. That finally made my tears stop. I loved going to the toy store. Even if we couldn't afford to buy anything, just seeing the toys filled my mind with joy. I could imagine playing with the toys once I got home. It felt so real to me. Does that sound good, my little Bobby Boo? But in that moment, the smile on my face disappeared. Bobby Boo, the other children said. They had heard my mom's nickname for me that she had called me since I was a baby. Bobby Boo. I'd never felt so embarrassed. If it wasn't bad enough that I was the poorest kid in school, now I'd be made fun of for having a baby nickname too. School was miserable that day. I kept my head down on my desk as the other kids teased me about my name. That afternoon, when my mom picked me up, I didn't say a word. She could tell something was wrong, but she didn't push me to talk about it. Instead, she kept her promise and took me to the toy store. We pulled up in front of the toy store, and I could hardly wait for the car to come to a stop before I hopped out. This was my favorite place on earth. I pressed my face against the glass and looked at all the toys in the window. Somehow this toy shop always had the latest and best new toys around. Special toys that you couldn't get anywhere else. I'll be back in an hour, my mom said, before heading off to run errands. But I hardly heard her. I was already running inside the toy store to get a closer look. Luckily, the toy shop owner took pity on me. He'd let me hang around the shop as long as I wanted, even though he knew I couldn't afford anything. Sometimes he'd even let me play with some of them. He must have seen how much it meant to me, and I could tell it made him happy to see how much I loved the amazing collection of toys he had on display. When there were no other customers, he'd even come play with the toys with me, showing me their amazing new features and details. The one thing he wouldn't tell me, though, was where the toys came from. I was dying to know. There were no labels on the boxes, no tags, nothing to give me an idea of who might be making them. The toy shop owner said it was his own secret, that the place where they were created made him promise not to tell their origin. That night, when I was home in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the toys, but I wasn't imagining playing with them, which is what I usually did as I drifted off to sleep. This time, all I could think about was where they came from, about the magical place that must be full of these wonderful toys. There's probably shelf after shelf full of these toys I loved, and new ones that I'd never even imagined. That's when I had an idea, one that would set me on the course that would change my life forever. The next morning, I woke up early and snuck out of the house. It was the one day a week my mom had off from work, so she always slept in late. I quietly went outside and got my bike and rode it to the toy store. You see, I knew that the shop always seemed to have new toys show up on Saturdays, and since I'd been there the day before, I knew that they must be getting delivered that morning. I stopped on my bike across the street and saw exactly what I was looking for. There was a truck parked outside the toy shop. I watched as a man in a uniform took multiple unmarked boxes out of the truck and brought them into the toy shop. This must be the delivery of new toys. There was nothing written on the truck or the boxes, no way to know where they were coming from. I'd have to follow him. It was tough on my bike, but luckily, the truck went slow enough that I was just able to follow it. I followed it to the edge of town, where I watched it pull through a gate and towards a huge, scary-looking factory. As the gate started to close, I saw my chance and slipped inside. I ran across the empty open yard and into a door that was cracked open. The inside of the factory was dark and very quiet. It seemed strange to me, but I thought that maybe it was closed on the weekends. As my eyes adjusted, I could see that there were tons of strange machines all around. I was sure that these odd and somewhat scary machines must be the ones that produced the toys I loved so much. I'd soon find out how right I was.
Hello, Bobby.
I spun around, terrified of the voice that had come out of the darkness. "Who's there?" I asked with a tremble in my voice. The person who had scared me so badly stepped towards me into one of the few rays of light on the dark factory floor. I let out a sigh of relief as I saw that it was the toy shop owner.
It looks like your curiosity finally got the better of you.
I started to immediately apologize. I told him that I just had to know where the toys came from, but that I was sorry and would go home straight away.
Don't worry, I'm not mad at all,
he said.
Quite the opposite, in fact.
I was confused. He wanted me to follow the truck here? He wanted me to discover the factory where his toys came from?
You see, if there's one thing I love in a child, it's curiosity.
I didn't understand what he was getting at. What do you mean? I asked.
It's very simple, really. I make children toys.
Children's toys, like toys for children, right?
Not exactly. I make children toys. Toys from children. And it's curious children that make for the best toys.
I'd never been more scared. An evil smile formed on the once kind toy shop owner's face.
Get him,
he called and pointed in my direction. From behind him appeared a pair of bizarre creatures. They looked like the box from Jack in the Box, but with 4 legs and an animal-like mouth full of sharp teeth. The creatures rushed towards me, so I turned and ran. I ran through the dark maze of machines, trying as hard as I could to escape the monsters chasing me. As I heard the evil laugh of the owner echo across the factory floor. The monsters were fast. They lunged forward, snapping at my heels and clawing at me as I ran. I did everything I could to try and lose them, but they wouldn't stop. When they chased me into a dead end, I had no choice but to climb the machinery in front of me. The monsters followed me to the top, and I was left with no escape. They backed me up towards the edge of the machine, which dropped off into a pit full of strange mechanical pieces. The machine started to whir to life, as if it knew I was close to it. The monsters kept getting closer and closer, and I had no choice but to back closer and closer towards the edge. One of the monsters leapt at me, and I lost my balance. I started to fall backwards and reached out for something, anything I could grab. The only thing my hand touched was one of the monsters, though. My hand gripped onto its furry leg as I fell backwards into the machine, dragging it along with me. From down on the floor, the owner watched as the machine fully came to life. He was intrigued by what was about to happen. Never before had a child got into the machine with one of his earlier creations. Inside the machine, I felt my body start to change. It was like I was being stretched and pulled in every direction at once. I felt myself being combined somehow with the monster that had been pulled into the machine with me. Everything began to grow dark, but before I lost consciousness, I had one last thought, a vision of myself as a baby, and my mother calling me Boxy Boo. When I emerged from the machine, I was completely changed. My body was now a box with a wind-up crank, just like the monsters that had been chasing me. My feet and hands, which were now connected to my body with stretchy springs, were covered in red fur. I could feel all my memories of my past life fading as I emerged from the machine.
Do you remember who you are?
The owner asked me. I tried to think back, to hold on to any memory that I could. All I could think of was that final memory of my mother. I tried to use my new mouth that was full of huge, sharp teeth to tell the owner that I was still a boy, that I still knew that I was Bobby Boo, but through my rough, toy-like throat, all that came out was something that sounded like
Boxy Boo. That's a great name for you. He told me. And that's how I became just another creature that stalks the floor of the factory. I soon discovered that I was far from the first child to be brought here. I wouldn't be the last. I was now the one who stalked the frightened children across the factory floor. And you know what? For the first time in my life, I was happy. Since now, I had lots of friends who would soon become toys just like me. I would never be lonely again.